Sorry, give me 1 minute.
Sorry, Wish, you're lagging. Couldn't hear you.
Sorry, here, let me just clear something up from my screen. All right. Once again, welcome and thank you for joining in. So our agenda today for this webinar will start with introducing the concept of risk-based selectivity, and then dive into the three concepts, which is selectivity, profiling, and targeting. From there, we'll discuss the best practices and some of the tips for maintaining an effective selectivity program in your administration. And I'll give you an overview of the selectivity module in ASYCUDA World with a live demo, where I'll show you the configurations, how to configure, how to actually make selectivity rules in the system. And then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. So for many of you here, selectivity is nothing new. Most of you have gone through some of the trainings on selectivity, basically on risk management. And the national project team of the countries, the ASYCUDA national project team of the countries have had some experience in configuring selectivity rules in ASYCUDA. So this is basically a refresher for most of you. Nevertheless, I'll take you through this webinar, and this can be all can start. If you have not yet done, you can start applying risk management in your administration in your countries. This selectivity was one of the common issues that was highlighted in the ISMP issue taking system. That's why we have brought up this topic to discuss and take you through some of the issues you probably may be facing. Um, I'll just run you through some of the terms and notes on selectivity so that those who are not familiar with it, they can grasp some points from here. So let's begin by understanding why selectivity matters. So under a traditional approach, customs inspects every single declaration, which sounds thorough, but severely stretches the resources and leads to delays in the supply chain. So basically, with risk-based targeting, the customs administrations can focus their efforts on high-risk shipments, delivering three key benefits. So firstly, efficiency. So what does that mean? So by inspecting fewer low-risk consignments, release times improve dramatically. Secondly, the resource optimization. So the customs administrations free up the officers to concentrate on areas that truly need attention. And thirdly, the compliance assurance. So by concentrating on higher risk profiles, the customs administrations enhance their ability to detect and deter non-compliance. So we all agree that the trade levels has increased over the years. However, the resources, that is the officers, remain same. The number of resources in the customs in countries remain almost the same. However, the trade increases. So not all consignments can be inspected 100%. The countries would like to inspect 100%. However, they are not able to do because of resource constraints. And that is why the selectivity, the risk-based approach needs to be taken. Before we jump into the system, let's clarify the terminology. So what is selectivity? So it's basically the overall process of deciding which shipment to inspect based on risk. So again, overall process of deciding which shipments to inspect based on risk. And profiling. So these are different terms which mean different things. Okay. So selectivity, overall process of deciding which shipments to inspect based on risk, whereas profiling is the mechanism by which we assign risk scores to consignments. So this is two different things. By looking at the data points, for example, the commodity codes, the value, CI value or FOB value, the importer history, the risk, high risk countries where the consignment is coming from. So that is profiling. Thirdly, targeting. So now targeting is the application of those profiles. When a declaration arrives, for example, when a declaration arrives or a declaration is done in the system compares it against the active profiles to decide an action. So think of profiling as scoring shipments and targeting as using those scores to direct the resources. And together, these three elements, that is selectivity, profiling, and targeting, form the backbone of risk-based selectivity. Now, how do we do the profile? So this methodology, risk profiling methodology. Um, the inputs include cargo type. For instance, if there's a controlled substance or there's a high dutiable item, such as cigarettes and liquor, or the country of origin where the goods are coming from, which may carry a specific risk. The trader history, the broker history, or declarant history, reflecting past compliance behavior. So maybe the declarant or the trader were not compliant previously. So for each of these criteria, a score is assigned, and the higher score is assigned for riskier characteristics. So if the declarant, the broker, has more compliant issue, there will be a higher score assigned to that. Then this is aggregated, the scores are aggregated into the overall risk rating. And a threshold is established to group these consignments into high, medium, and low risk tiers. So in customs terms, that is basically red, yellow, or green. So high is red lane, medium, yellow, and low is green lane. And there's another lane, which is blue lane, which is audit. Basically, the higher risk, that means the red lane consignments, they trigger 100% selectivity or a hold in the release. Medium risk, the yellow lane, probably will trigger just documentary checks, for example, permits or license or invoice. And the low risk can be fast track. The green lane can be cleared quickly. So as you can see, the diagram there, which depicts how the risk management engine basically works. So data is fed in through SAD, through web bills, through transit documents, or any e-document in the system, or it's extracted from past data. It is analyzed, and then profiles are done in the system. And then according to the profiles, the different channels are selected. Okay. Sorry. Very quickly, some of the best practices and pitfalls or challenges, and we'll give an example. Sorry. So when it comes to best practices, now I always suggest that for any customs administration, there needs to be a risk management committee. So where the committee decides or sits together and decides on the risk profiles that needs to be applied to different importers or countries or commodities.
Bisa ditekan link.
Sorry, Arishma,
Kita
can you
join.
mute the mics, please?
Bisa ni kaluitan. Santi ta join.
Thank you. Okay, as I was saying, so the committee will sit and decide on the risk. This is a very confidential um, confidential task, and it's not up to just one person to decide whom to target. There needs to be a committee, a group of professionals who needs to look at the data, the past history, and then decide, okay, this is what we'll target, this is whom we'll target. So the best practice is that begin with a small set of straightforward rules. Okay? So this helps to validate your approach and prevent unintended holes. So make your rules very straightforward so that you don't overcomplicate and the system does not unnecessarily hold uh, consignments which are not needed to be inspected. You should leverage your historical transaction data, so past data. Extract those data, the import the trade data, and do your profiling and targeting based on the past or historical data. So past trends in non-compliance can provide a solid foundation for your risk profiles. So as you accumulate the rule, the performance metrics, revisit your threshold values and adjust the red, yellow, or green, basically high and medium, or low bands to fine-tune accuracy. So once the rule is set, you should periodically review those rules. It's not that you have made a rule, okay, you are targeting company A, and the rule stays there forever. Maybe now the company A is non-compliant, so it's high risk. But over the years, or over certain period, the company becomes compliant. So you cannot keep that company in the same channel as a high risk or red lane forever. So this committee should periodically revise or review the rules so that you do not hold or inspect or hinder trade unnecessarily. Finally, you can maintain a clear documentation of every rule change. So the date, who has requested the profile, because profiles can be coming in from different sections of your administration as well. So the investigation section can say, okay, this is our investigation result, and you can profile this, or the validation section, or the long room, and certain officers can also say, okay, we want to profile this. So you have to keep a record, basically, to see who has requested the profiles, the date and the change, and the reason for that. So that basically you can track the evolution and support your audits or stakeholder questions, because stakeholders can come back and say, okay, why did you profile me? I mean, that can happen, and they can be in audit. So you should be able to um, back up your profiles. So, okay, this is why we did the profiles. Because as I said, this is very confidential. This is very critical component of trade facilitation. So some of the pitfalls, some of the downfalls of this can be that when you create rules which are very complex, they become unmanageable. So after this, I'll show you the demo and how it is done. If you do a lot of if then else statements, that rule becomes very, very complicated. So it is very hard to manage that. And you should also look at the importance of clean and reliable data. So going back to your trade history, your trade data. If your inputs, whatever you input, are flawed, even the best design rules will misfire. So maybe your inputs are not accurate. Then if the consignment is coming, it might not select. The system might not trigger that. Thirdly, you should set a regular review. So like I said, you should review it. And selectivity isn't a set and forget feature. Okay, it's not there for lifetime. It's a living thing, as we can say, and it needs to be reviewed according to the market conditions, the trade patterns, and also the fraud schemes. It evolves. Okay, the modus operandi evolves, so you need to know how things or how fraud is taking place, and you need to do the rules according to that as well. For example, okay, so there is a high risk importer. There's a history for high risk for that importer, and this trader is flagged as a high risk. A profile is created and a score is assigned. So a score is assigned to the TIN number, tax identification number, for 100% inspection. So upon the declaration, submission of the declaration, the system automatically holds this for inspection. As a result, the clearance times for this importer increases from 2 hours to 24 hours. So if an importer is flagged, if a trader is flagged, the clearance time will also increase. And we know time is money. Through that, you can capture the or catch the undervaluations and recover the duty revenue which may have been gone if you did not do the profiles. Meanwhile, the overall system throughput will improve because the low risk-based traders will bypass the unnecessary inspections. So basically, this case highlights the targeting and profiling and how it gains the operational efficiency. Okay, I will do a demo of this, and I'll show you how to create rules in ASYCUDA. I'll be using the FSM training system, and thank you, FSM team, for allowing me to use it. These are all sample data, so this is not live data. Again, as I said, this is just a refresher. Most of you have gone through this, and I'll be touching on the basic rules of creating the selectivity. And that does not mean we cannot have complex rules, but for this session, we'll do some basic training. Rajesh, if you can advise if you can see the ASYCUDA screen.
Yes, can see it.
Okay, thank you. So in ASYCUDA, all of the countries have this selectivity module installed as standard. And all of these custom administrations here have applied selectivity at one point, right? Let me just move this. So how do you go about doing this? You'll see ASYCUDA. And okay, let me change my orientation, sorry. Okay, this should be fine. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So under the ASYCUDA binder, you'll see selectivity. And under selectivity, there are a couple of e-documents. What we are looking for is the selectivity national criteria. So you'll see there's a selectivity local criteria, and there's a selectivity national criteria. The difference between local and national. So local is basically targeting the specific office, the specific port. So you can have a selectivity profile for selective office only. And when the selectivity profile hits, it will only hit or look at that port. The national criteria, it looks at the national level. So if a declaration is submitted and it hits the profile, it will target all the ports, irrespective of which port it came through. Right. So how to create it? Click on new, and you'll see this. So simply there is an option for code, valid from, valid to. You can have different time periods. So you can actually have set time periods during which the selectivity will run. So you can say, okay, we'll run the selectivity, we'll run this profile for this particular trader for 1 month. So you can actually set a valid from and valid to trade. You can also set whether the criteria will be for export or import or for both. So usually, okay, you can have whichever option you want, whether you can to say both or for import or export only. This documentation part is where you will write instructions for the officers. So these are the officers which does the validation, okay, or does the checks once the entry is selected. So whatever you put here will be a guide or guidance for them to action or to take action on that particular entry. And this is where you'll put the rule. Okay. So I'll show you a sample rule. This is for FSM test data. Okay, so these are some of the rules that we were testing on. And you see there's a valid from and valid to. That means this rule has expired. However, if you see these ones, which does not have a valid to, means they are still active. Now, you'll see the criteria code. So we are trying to name the code in a way that it makes sense. So if someone looks at this code and say, okay, this code or this profile basically controls or selects control items. So control items can be prohibited or restricted items, arms and ammunitions, right? Or this profile looks at the banned items. So try to have profile codes in a meaningful or have a meaningful name for the profiles, profile codes. Let's look at one of the profiles. All right. So the code control items, it starts from 17th of February. It's only for import. And the documentation is for the officer is to check license permits and certificates. So the officer who is checking this entry will know, okay, this particular profile requires me to check the license permits and certificates. And this is how the profile rule looks like. It may look like programming and all this, but if you see it's very simple. So the first line is the criteria. So the name, control items. Second line, these are the variables like in list star. In list star means the tariff code of the control items. This line basically means if that tariff code is found in the control items list, then red line is 100. Then means that that particular entry will be selected red for inspection. 100 means 100%. So 100% of these items which are in this list will be selected for inspection. You can reduce this value. This is the percentage. You can say 50%. So what it means that 50% of the entries which has the tariffs in this list will be selected. So half of the entries coming in will be selected. And you can actually reduce or actually have different values based on your assessment or your profile, your targeting, and your selectivity. So it's very simple. These 4 lines will select all the items coming under this list to 100%. Now let's look at this list. What are these lists? Or what it contains in this list? So we'll close this. So the list is control items. And we'll go back to this. So there is a selectivity list. And if you do a find, this is also something that you need to configure. Now the list was control items. Okay. So if I view this, you'll get this e-document. At the bottom, you see different tabs. So general, companies, declarant, countries, communities, transport, ID, container number. What this basically means, in ASYCUDA, you can profile, you can do profiling with these elements, you can say. So you can profile by companies. You can profile by declarants. The company is basically the consignees, right? Traders. You can profile by declarants, by countries, by the commodity. This is the manifest. Right? You can profile the manifest or the vessels coming in, or you can profile the container as well. Now, for our example, we were looking at the commodity. So you can see here, these are the chapters, chapter 30, chapter 27, 29, 38. So these are the commodities which are included in that list. So if an entry is done, if a custom declaration is done, and in that declaration, chapter 30 is included, 30 something, then this entry will be selected red line based on this criteria. So you can have this criteria done once, and then you can do modifications or review of these community codes. You don't have to go back and change this. You know that there is a selectivity rule which targets all the control items to red line. So very easily you can go to this and then change. So for example, you decide, okay, chapter 30 is no longer a control item. What you can do is remove chapter 30 from there. And it's very simple. How to remove, how to add. Again, you'll go to selectivity. If it's in existing, then you do a find, right click, and update. So you'll have options, update, direct delete, or lock. So you can update. So going to the commodities, and you see, okay, now you are able to highlight that, and by right clicking and remove, you'll be able to remove that particular chapter. You can have the whole tariff code actually, not just by chapter. So chapter means anything with chapter 30, it will select. But if you want to target specific HS, you can have the specific HS till the 11, 12, or 13 digit. Okay? And you can add more as well. Similarly, let's look at another example. Let's say national criteria, let's find another one. So that was on control items, that rule. So let's look at one. So there's control items, then ban items, there's a high risk companies. So if you want to profile some companies, some traders, based on the historical clearances. So similarly, very simple, you write the documentations, all imports coming through by that trader will be red line, but only 50%. Okay. So what it means that if in list.com means the variable company list is a company list. If it is found, if the trader's TIN is found in this list, then that trader's consignments declarations will be selected red line, but only 50%. So if they have done 10 entries, only 5 will be selected red. let's go and see the company list. So similarly, you can add the companies in that list as well. So there's a company, remember that this company code and whatever you enter here, company should match. Otherwise it won't work. So view and code company, and under company you'll see some of the companies which are targeted. So if the declaration hits this company 0267, it will look at so 50% of that will be selected. And again, this needs to be reviewed periodically. So you cannot have these companies forever in the system. Or maybe from 50%, you want to increase to 100%. So you can also do that. Let's very quickly do one example of how the selectivity will work. So let me quickly get one company which is targeted. This. So I'll do one declaration to show you how the criteria, how you can view the criteria and how selectivity works. Right? Let's do one new. It's a bit slow. My internet is a bit slow, so it might take some time to open. Right. Let's get one entry. Okay. Now, let's do one entry with a high risk commodity. So let me look at the rule. So which one is a high risk? Oh, I said chapter 30, right? So anything under chapter 30 should be selected. Again, this is just test data. Okay. Very quickly. Oh, I need to attach the scan docs. Invoice. Okay. Let's assess. All good. Yes. Okay. Now this is something I want to point out. Now when you assess, and it depends on the country's configuration. Okay. Now for FSM, it is assessed right now, but there is no selectivity. The selectivity has not triggered, because according to their configuration, you have to pay first and then trigger selectivity. So now I need to pay the declaration and trigger selectivity. Then the selectivity profile will work. However, in some countries, selectivity works before payment. So it is selectivity before payment. So as soon as entry is assessed, selectivity is triggered, and the user will know, okay, this is red, yellow, or green line. So in this case, it needs to be paid first. So 658. Let me quickly paste this and then we'll trigger the selectivity. Okay. So this is the consignee. Sorry. Office is UPNI 2025. Sorry. All right. Now, since it is paid, I can go and find that entry. And I can trigger the selectivity. So this is the option where you select or trigger the selectivity. And the system will look at the profiles and then it should give you, yes, I need to select. Okay. You see, before it was grayed out, now it is red line. Okay, so that means that particular entry is selected red. Now, how will the officers know what actions to take? Simply, they can click on that entry and see the criteria. So view criteria. And it should show them what profiles of what criteria has been selected for that entry and what actions to take. So it is very important to whoever is actually writing the profile criteria under the documentation, they should write clear directives for the officer on what action to take on that particular entry. So you'll see for this particular entry, the control items profile or criteria has been hit, and the documentation for the officers, what to do. So check license, permits, and certificates. Note that there can be more than one criteria hitting one particular entry. So if it was a profile company, also control item or banned item or high risk country. So it will select three criterias, three different. So you can always check or click on those different criteria codes and see what the instructions are or why it was selected. So in this case, it was just one. So the officer would know, okay, I need to check this permits and certificates or do 100% inspection after that. Okay. So this was just very, very simple demo on how to do selectivity, how to do rules, but there are more complex ones. And all of you out here, you have some sort of selectivity profiling done, configured in your system. Yeah, I'll leave the demo here. And I see there are a few questions on the chat. Before I give you some questions from my end, or I ask you some questions from my end. Yes, Stanley. So I see. Okay. Unfortunately, since it seems impossible to view the history of the selectivity list, it is important to document the criteria so that there are records of past targets. If I understand your question correctly, Stanley, you mean to say the history of who did the changes? You can unmute your mic and we can clarify this. Stanley?
Hi, everyone.
Yes, Stanley.
Yeah, no, it's just that the list, if you're in front of in the system, if you right click and you go to details, the past amendments are there. I mean, done by who, but maybe it's just our setting here, or I don't know if it's general. If you click on any of them and you try to view it, it gives an exception. Do you get that?
Okay. Let me show you. Okay, let me quickly share my screen to show you. Yes, there is an option to see the history. Maybe there is some issue with your configuration, but to see the history of who did what, you can always right click and go to details. And under details, you'll see this version and there will be some more records. So if I did more changes to this, there will be more versions of that track records. And if I want to see what changes I did before that, I will right click and I will view that. And let me close this. So now I get it. So there is a error on that. So this is basically a configuration issue, and we can always look at that as well. Yeah, but it is very similar to how you look at the declaration details and the version history for that. I understand what you mean, Stanley. So we have seen that error here as well, but it's something that we can always look at and clarify on that. Thank you. Okay, you can start. And that's the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. I have a few questions for you all. Just general questions. Yes, Sharda.
I have two questions. One is, which version of ASYCUDA is FSM using? Because our version doesn't have. Sorry, I think sound is not.
I can hear you, Sharda.
Okay, like our version doesn't have the container numbers and the vessel ID as a selectivity list.
Okay, so the version that FSM is using is 433. Fiji is 431, 432. So FSM using 433 right now. And I think Fiji is on 432.
So ours is 4.31. So that option is there in the later version.
Yes.
Okay, and another example you have showed that if you put multiple companies in a list and you put selectivity rate as 50%, so how the system will work? Like will it select 50% of SID from one company or all the list of all the 5 companies?
From the list of that company. So you see there's a list, so company list. So 50% of those lists. So if you want to specifically target countries or companies for 100% or not in that list, you can create different criteria codes for those companies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shada. Stanley, you have asked another question. So does any other country use the other administrative selectivity for other agencies such as biosecurity? Yeah, I know Fiji does. Fiji has been using that administrative selectivity for biosecurity at Ministry of Health. I think Ministry of Fisheries. Maybe Sharada can clarify on that, and Vanuatu for now in the region. So what does the other administrative selectivity means for those who are not aware? So this is going beyond the selectivity created by customs administration. Okay, we can have a selectivity for other administrations which are part of the clearance as well. So like biosecurity or Ministry of Health. or any other agencies who are part of the supply chains or trade clearance. Okay. Joseph, if any other country using administrative selectivity, can we have another webinar session for this, please? Yeah, we can do a demo and a session for other administrative selectivity on that as well in future. Okay. So I have a few questions while we wait for the others to ask questions. Let me share screen. So, is there any country who is still using 100% inspections of declarations? So you can show by raise of hands, or you can write in the chat. So
Inspection like physical or document inspection?
yes, physical inspections.
Okay.
So I know Palau, they were doing 100% inspections before ASYCUDA, and even for a few months after ASYCUDA was implemented. So all the consignments was 100% inspected. However, we started to apply risk management, and we identified the top 2 companies which contributed to 80% of the trade, and now they are on green lane. So maybe there are some companies or countries who are still applying or not applying the risk management and are doing 100% inspection. And this is something that you may take back to your administration, to your management, and see. Yes, Titus.
Thank you, Riz. Yes, also Noro is still doing the 100% physical inspection.
Right. So I think it also comes down to what your legislation has to say on the clearance, and if you are able to apply the risk management in your clearance. But I think
Yes,
this is something, yeah.
there is a risk management also according to the regulation, but we also capture the reason why we're doing the 100% because sometimes we're receiving the SAT without attachment.
So well, that can be easily configured for attachment. You can have that as a mandatory item to be attached.
Yes, I know it's mandatory that the setup is mandatory, but we capture some few entry that's coming in without the attachment, like invoice and
Yes, you mean they are not attaching anything at all, or they are just selecting the attachment codes and attaching a different thing apart from the invoice?
no, they're not attaching the
Okay.
invoice and the entries it's in already.
Okay, so they are also rule that can be applied to make that mandatory. The attachment of invoice and attachment of bills can be mandatory. As you may have seen, when I was doing a verification, there was an error, 2 errors basically. It was asking me to attach those 2 entries. So there is a rule which can be applied. So this is actually an issue which needs to be looked at. I mean, because of that, you are not able to apply risk management. And there's a simple fix for that, where the rule can mandate the attachment of entry, the documentation, such as invoice and bills. That is, sorry, you're from
Nauru.
now. Okay, okay. Please, we can have a look at that. Right? Can email that, and we can
Yes.
set it up.
Yes. No worries.
Yes, colleagues, during this session, please take this opportunity to clarify any issues, doubts you may have experienced related to this risk management and this topic. So, like Titus has mentioned about this. So answers to question 1, 2, and 3 for Vanuatu. Now, question 2. The biggest challenges with inspecting every shipment, time, manpower, accuracy. Yes. And question 3, do you have clear thresholds defined in your system for red, yellow, green lanes? And if yes, how often do you revisit them? So anyone of you want to answer those questions through the chat, or you can raise your hands and you can speak up. So Vanuatu says they review the thresholds every quarterly. Okay, this is good. Anyone else? So other countries, what do you think the biggest challenge is with inspecting every single shipment? Do you think is time or manpower or the accuracy of inspection? Do you think that the officers really go and inspect? If the entry is selected 100%, do you think that the officers really go and inspect a 40-foot container from front to back? Be honest. Okay. So, yes, Jolene saying no. Yeah, because of time, manpower, there's a big challenge. So if you are not inspecting 100% of the containers, even though it's selected 100%, then I think it's better to apply the risk management. Yes, Jolene, you can go ahead, speak.
Hello?
Yes, Jolene.
Yeah, no, the reason why I said no is there is, for Palau's case, there is no such thing as 100% inspection, as we don't have capacity to offload, let's say, a 40-footer full container, mixed merchandise. We don't have a facility to offload. We don't have equipment, and we don't have enough manpower. Even though before ASYCUDA was implemented, we were doing 100% inspection, but there was no proof that 100% inspection was conducted. Thank you.
Thanks, Jolene. Thanks for that input. Yes, and another issue is the space. So I understand there's small island nations. We have limited space at our ports. So inspecting containers 100% at the ports will be time consuming, and that is also a challenge. Yes, Stanley, yes, you said that. Just wish to also share that in Vanuatu, sorry, in Vanuatu, designated custom officials are trained to maintain the selectivity criteria. This work is not done by the project team. This approach gives them the ownership of this sensitive matter. Yes, thank you very much for highlighting that, Stanley. Like I mentioned, there should be a risk management committee, and not necessarily it needs to be the project team. It can be comparison of different sections, officers from different sections. So like just Stanley has said, this gives the ownership to them because it is sensitive matter, it is confidential, critical. So the project team, the national project team, can be the one who is actually entering the criteria and the rules in the system, but they need not necessarily be the ones deciding on that. There should be a separate team, separate committee who decides on these criteria and then passes it on to the national project team because they are familiar with how to create this criteria in the system. Thank you, Stanley, for highlighting that. Yeah.
Riz, we very quickly ran a poll for the second question. So if everyone can just vote, we'll find out the biggest challenge.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Danushki. Thank you. Yes, please, if everyone can vote on that poll, you will see it on your screen. What is the biggest challenge? Time accuracy or manpower to see the challenge that we face or the countries face in inspecting containers. Okay. Okay. And so far, we see that the biggest challenge is manpower, the resources, the human resources, the officers. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, if there are no other questions and if you have submitted your poll, once again, thank you very much for your time and attention and the comments and feedback on this. And we have a question. Okay, sorry, FSM. Lorena, go ahead. Yes, Lorena, you may speak. Yeah.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Yeah, our chat box is not really friendly, so I tried to chat, but it says unblocked because you're not a member. I don't know what that means, but um, just to briefly answer the three questions. Number one, no. Number two, manpower, and everything is related to manpower, time and accuracy. If you have less, then number three, we do have the threshold, but it's a new thing for us. So we're we're still discussing whether we're gonna revisit or visit quarterly or semi-annually. And my question is, do you have the codes for the criterias for selectivity? If you can share with us, thank you.
Thank you, Lorena, for answering those questions. And your question is the codes. So I understand you mean by that you mean the criteria that I was showing you.
Yes, that's right.
Right. Okay. So like I showed you, the test server that I was using is your training system basically, and all the codes and the criteria is there. So if you want to create new ones, you can always refer to that, copy and paste to the new one and reuse that just by changing the code name. So everything is already there.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, then again, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next session. Bye.